we look at a few examples of participatory design in Urbanized, the last film that I did in the design trilogy. You know, one good example that is pretty well publicized is Alejandro Aravena and Elemental in Santiago, Chile, and their social housing projects there, where they're really involving the people that are going to be using those spaces in the design. And just simple things, whether like questions, whether to have a bathtub or a water heater or a shower, or things that I think most designers wouldn't think about asking the user. They would just say, oh, well, of course they want, you know, this feature. Anytime you don't involve the users of all these objects and buildings and streets in the process of designing them, you end up with things that aren't designed for people. They're just, you know, designed as these, you know, individual objects that, you know, just kind of plop down in the landscape. Especially when you're designing with constraints, whether they're economic constraints or spatial constraints, having the users involved in that conversation can, I think, really help make the designs more efficient and more cost efficient too. I always think it's usually not more expensive to design something well, but it just takes a little bit, maybe a little bit more time and a little bit more thought to do it. You know, I think that's a different philosophy. I think most of the time politicians or, you know, administrators or even, you know, architects, they sort of design in this bubble, and they're really not thinking about you know, how this object is going to be used. They're thinking about the object unto itself and not thinking about the context. So it seems like that it's got to change, because that's most of the problems, I think, if you look at urban design or just poorly designed objects or communications. It's generally about that. There's no empathy towards the user of those things. I think the role of the architect or designer has to be to somehow facilitate that communication with the user. You know, a lot of times we're not designing objects or spaces, but we're designing kind of structures for people to get involved. I think there's some really interesting projects happening. The one that we look at in Urbanized that I think is so amazing and really simple is Candy Chang, who's a public artist who's based in New Orleans, and she did these stickers that just say, like, I wish this was, and then it's a blank space. It's like those name tags, hello, my name is. And she put them on abandoned buildings all around New Orleans, and just put a pen next to them and just invited people to write in what they wish that building was. And, you know, people said silly responses and some people said very practical responses. But it's just that idea that people probably, you know, who have nothing to do with urban design or architecture, who are walking by that abandoned building, are going to look at that and at least think, and well, yeah, what do I want there? And I think that's the key to involving people in design. It's that idea of possibility. Like, what could this be, or what would I really want it to be? And the response might be completely different for every single individual, but at least that's starting a dialogue. It's beginning a dialogue with the users of the city. We don't really have an alternative. I mean, I think we have to do that because everything is becoming more critical, and resources are more scarce, and space is less and less in a city, and there's more people and more money and more you know, risk. So I think that the chances of that just being wasted effort and wasted, you know, time and wasted creativity are much higher. The challenge is really for designers to kind of make it easy for people to get involved. I think that's what's got to happen. You know, if people aren't used to kind of thinking this way, you know, all the kind of internet and connectivity in the world isn't going to really change the way they operate. And I think that's the challenge for designers, is to kind of make platforms that do get people involved, who might not ordinarily get involved in crowdfunding or crowdsourcing or any kind of participatory, you know, platform on the web. It's about making people, or letting people get involved without even thinking that they're getting it. You know, they don't even know that they're getting involved, but it's so easy and it makes so much sense that people just kind of do it. So that's the challenge for design. That's a design problem. I think, you know, what we're going to see is that idea of crowdfunding in every facet of our lives, whether it's, you know, a record or a playground in your neighborhood or anything, or a car or a city even. I think you could probably see a city being crowdfunded. It's just that idea of how the internet, you know, has already connected us, and now let's look at the kind of you know, the real benefits that can come from that. So this is just one facet, I think, of that increased connectivity that the web brings. So there's no reason why, you know, you can't crowdfund a playground or you know, or a building or a city. More and more going to become the norm, and not just be about, you know, records and kind of creative projects, but, you know, anything that people need and that they want to see happen, and that they're, you know, crowdfunding is an option to kind of make that happen. Just people aren't used to doing things this way, and it's starting out in the kind of creative world, but, you know, I think gradually transferring to kind of every facet of everyday life. But you know, it's a lot to try to get people to change the way they do things, you know. That thought process of, well, I need something, so of course I'm going to go to a store and I'm going to look on the shelves and I'm going to find whatever is closest to what I need, instead of, I need something and I want exactly what I need and gosh, there must be another 1,000 people who want exactly this thing. How can I connect all those people together and get that? So I think it's you know, just a change in the way people do things, and the way people buy things, and the way people, you know, live, basically. And that kind of change, I think, takes a lot of time, and especially in societies that are very entrenched in the way that things are supposed to happen. I think it's going to take a while to kind of have that really disruptive change. I don't think there is like a perfect city design or undesign. You know, so much of urban design is this sort of building on, you know, what came before, and this kind of cumulative approach, and it's incremental change. And that's how I think cities improve. There are always these experiments throughout history of, like, you know, oh, this is the, you know, I've come up with the perfect design, and the apartments need to be over here, and the businesses, or whatever it is, or it's mixed use, or whatever. But I just don't think you can design the perfect city. I think it just has to kind of design itself. And then it becomes about, again, involving the people that are living there in the design. I think that's how you get to the, you know, the quote-unquote perfect city. But I don't think that anybody knows what it looks like. I don't think anybody can say, oh, this is what the perfect city looks like. It's this, because it's always about individual needs, and that those cannot be anticipated. And how human beings change, and how societies change. What's important to us as a society now in 20 years or 30 years may not be what's important, you know, then. So again, I don't think there's any way to kind of foresee what it physically looks like. But I think that the ideas and the concept of again, of involving people in the design of the city, that is what I can see leading towards, or getting closer to that ideal of what a city looks like.